Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us tonight to consider this most important topic. Before delving in, I still have in my mind the song I heard on the way to the airport on the radio, which went like this. I'm not a saint, but I'm not a sinner. Everything's cool as long as I'm getting thinner. Which I think expresses a profound truth, actually. It's a serious question. In a society in which the self is the body, to some degree, as long as we're getting thinner, do we even believe that there is such a thing as a sexual right and a sexual wrong? Right? Nobody wants to judge. Adultery is now a lifestyle choice. A 22-year-old woman from San Diego is now auctioning off her virginity to the highest bidder. Right? And we're not supposed to judge. And yet I would submit that we do judge all the time. When I was living here in Manhattan some 10 years ago, I'll never forget the time when I was innocently buying my Metro Pass and sipping my coffee, and a man came up from behind me and barked at me, and he said, "You know, you shouldn't drink those Frappuccinos. They're very fattening." And I was shocked that a perfect stranger would presume to judge my beverage choices that way. But then I realized that everybody has a notion of right and wrong, and to this man, Frappuccinos were just wrong. My worthy opponent, Sydney Barrows, writes in her memoir, The Mayflower Madam, that a DNS in the call girl business stood for do not send. Men who were obnoxious or who had really gross apartments, she wouldn't send her girls to such men. And she also writes, whenever I read about a business who had done something I didn't approve of, such as building an ugly high-rise in a residential neighborhood, I added his name to the list, just in case he ever called us. Which I thought was really funny. Also, to some people, building an ugly high-rise is morally wrong. It's an offense against the aesthetic order. Ladies and gentlemen, I would submit to you that paying for sex is at least as wrong as building an ugly high-rise. Perhaps more so. Why? Because we're talking about using a human being as a means to your ends. Today, people want to believe that paying for sex is just like paying for a hamburger. But a sexual transaction is different because it touches on the deepest, most personal aspects of ourselves. The proof that sex is different, in my opinion, is our response to the terrible crime of rape. If paying for sex were as morally neutral as paying for a hamburger, well then rape is akin to just forcing someone to eat a hamburger, right? But of course it is not. It's a horrible crime that is serious precisely because sexuality touches on the deepest, most personal aspects of our humanity. And to take something so intimate and to turn it into a commodity has far-reaching, devastating effects for men, women, and children. Everyone agrees that after the Netherlands adopted legalization, that this has added fuel to the gangs who trafficked in underage girls, and that the abuse and child prostitution exploded rather than was reduced. It's time to ask why. Well, firstly, what we value in women eventually trickles down to girls. For example, today we place a lot of value on hotness in women. Have you noticed this? And so now, for example, in the Bratz Babies video, which is watched by 3- and 4-year-old girls, by the way, you can hear cartoon babies singing songs about being hotter than hot, show what you've got, ready or not. For 3-year-olds, what we value in women inevitably trickles down to girls. Secondly, prostitution, like all industries, is demand-led. Someone could go to great trouble manufacturing coats made from cockroaches, but since nobody wants cockroach coats, the supplier would soon find that there's no market, no demand, and no money in it, except maybe Ozzy Osbourne would buy it. But because prostitution is demand-led, it's the paying for sex that's the problem. That's what creates the demand. And given that the average age of entry into prostitution is 13 or 14 years old, I think this presents a huge moral problem. I receive a ton of emails from girls who are 14, 15, leave home because they've been abused, only to try to escape prostitution. Unfortunately, at the time, one writes to me, it was all I felt I had to offer the world, my body. As you can no doubt guess, I was molested by my father for many years when I was a child. It's why my mother let me leave. So in a sense, I was raised to believe my body had only one use, and I was worth only this one thing. We can talk later about why the molestation rates for prostitutes are so high, why the suicide rates are so high. But right now I want to focus on the fact that the problem is that nobody knows if these girls are 14 or 18, right? And when you think about the sheer number of sex slaves in captivity in the US, we're talking about anything from 30,000 to 50,000. It's staggering and it's sickening. We're talking about girls that are having sex with 20 to 30 men per day. One girl told the New York Times about her cell of traffickers. Her captors offered 3 age ranges of sex partners, toddler to age 4, age 5 to 12, and teens, as well as a damaged group, where they could do anything that they wanted. When one of the Mexican child trafficking rings was busted in a house in Plainfield, New Jersey, another Mexican ring was recently busted, but this one was a few years ago. The neighbors, in retrospect, thought about all the cars that came and all of the girls that left that house to buy candy, but they always said no one knew what was going on. I'm always struck that the neighbors always say this. Well, somebody knew what was going on because someone was paying for the sex. To those who are against trafficking, but they insist that some women have nothing else to sell but their bodies, I say that they suffer from a real lack of imagination about the power of the human spirit and about the strength of women in particular. And if you keep up with the Harvard Business Review, you may have noticed that they're now talking about microloans to poor women and only lending them, only having these loans to poor women, right? Because they notice that the poorest of women reinvest in the household and the men do not. So we have to believe in the women first. It takes a risk to give them that loan. If instead we demand their bodies instead of appealing to their intelligence, it's this philosophy of this is all she can do, and the not too subtle misogyny behind it that feeds the demand and the expectations that cause the problem.
Wendy Shalit, your time is up.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you.